Welcome back to Camino Talks, where we dive deep into the stories, the lessons, and the unforgettable moments from the Camino de Santiago. I'm Tania Ramonde. I'm the social media manager at Follow the Camino, and I'll be your host today for this brand new live episode of Camino Talks. But of course, I'm not alone. We have a special guest today, someone who not only walked the Camino, but wrote a book about it. Ruth O'Leary, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We are excited to have you here too, as well. I just wanted to give a few lines of who you are for those who may not know you. So Ruth is an author from Dublin, Ireland. Her debut novel, The Weekend Break, hit the Irish Times bestseller upon his release in March 2024. And now she's presenting her second novel, A Week to Remember. In this book, we follow the story of three strangers who meet on the Camino de Santiago in their first night in Sardia, and they are all walking for different reasons, to say shortly. And they carry their own baggage, both literal and emotional. It's a story of connection, of transformation, and it's just a perfect reflection of what the Camino is. Welcome again to the Camino Talks. And let's start to the beginning. Walking has been such a fundamental part of the human history, of storytelling, of personal growth. What role has walking played in your life?
Okay, well, I'm very lucky that I live in Dublin, and I'm very lucky that I live beside the sea. And I also live beside a huge park, one of the biggest parks in Dublin. So, and I'm not a big fan of exercise, so you won't find me in the gym. So I have too many nice places to walk here. So I just get into the habit, because I'm a writer, that involves sitting down at a computer for so many hours a day. Even when you're not writing, you're doing social media, you're doing whatever, but you're sitting down. So every day I try to get up and go out early and walk down by the seafront and to break, before I sit down. And I use that time to kind of clear my head, think about what I'm going to be writing today. And the funny thing is that before I went on the Camino, I would never walk when it was, dark or too early. I'd wait until it was bright. But since the Camino, I think you kind of, somewhere in my brain, it craves that same quiet and that sunrise time. So now I get up at like 6:30 my time, so just before sunrise, and go out at that time when it's quieter. I just don't like hearing the traffic when I'm walking anymore, and that's one of the things that came out of the Camino for me.
Yeah, that's definitely a change. And what made you take the leap and think about the Camino as experience for you? And once you walk, why turn the Camino into a novel?
I know. So this is kind of funny, because the Camino was never on my list of things to do. And I had heard about the Camino, and I'd met people who'd been on the Camino, but my image of the Camino, I thought it was more religious. And I know it is religious for a lot of people, and I know it is a pilgrimage for a lot of people. But I had been to Lourdes before, and I kind of thought that it was going to be that kind of intense religious experience. So it wasn't on my radar to do. It wasn't something that I had decided that I must do in my lifetime. But I started to meet lots of people who had done the Camino and kept saying, oh my God, it's just, and they couldn't even really describe how it affected them, except to say that it had affected them. And some of my friends are not religious at all, and they did it. So the funny thing is that when I started, the first book I wrote, The Weekend Break, is about 4 friends with 4 secrets. So this time I wanted to write a book about strangers, because sometimes when strangers meet, they tell each other things more than they would tell their friends, because they think, I'm not going to see this person again. So they tend to share more. So I came up with my characters. I had a 60-year-old woman, a 50-year-old woman, and a 39-year-old. I wanted them to be strangers, but I wanted something big to happen to them. So each of them has a life-changing event happen to them at the same time, but not related. because they're in different parts of Ireland, right? And they need to get away quickly. So they need to get away somewhere to clear their head, to think about what's happened in their lives and to process that, but also figure out how they can move forward. So I had my 3 women, I had their problems, and then I thought, okay, where are these women going to meet? And I said, I know, I'm going to send them to a yoga retreat in Greece. That was my first idea, right? And I started to write it. But at the same time, I was looking for new walking shoes, right? So I'd started building up my speed. I was walking an hour a day, but I was walking a very fast hour. So I needed new walking shoes. So while I was Googling yoga retreats in Greece, I was also Googling walking shoes. And we all know what happens when you start to Google. Those algorithms come in, right? And suddenly I was getting ads for ferries in Greece, but also for walking holidays. And then I kept getting more ads for the Camino. And it just went into my subconscious. I didn't think much of it at the time. But the more I tried to write these women to Greece, send them to Greece, it just was not working. And I kept saying, well, I couldn't understand, why is this not working? Maybe Greece isn't the right place. So the whole time I kept thinking Camino was in the back of my head. And it's like, the way people would say the call of the Camino, a saying. And I think it was just the call of the Camino was in my subconscious, that no matter how I tried to send these women to Greece, it's like, now I know this sounds crazy to people who don't write, because they're imaginary women in my head, but it's like they're imaginary people. It's like they decided they were not going to Greece. So I said, I know it sounds crazy, but they didn't want to go. So I said, okay, the Camino kept tapping on my head. So I said, right, I'm going to just have a quick look at the Camino. And I started looking at YouTube videos. And then I looked up different Camino sites, including your own. And I ordered the brochure so that I could have a look. And as soon, very quickly, when I looked, the videos that I looked at were people who were on the Camino, and there were people my age. So I'm almost 58. And my women were going to be older women. And I was watching them walking and just loving it and the freedom of it. And also there's a lot of videos I discovered about by women who are walking on their own. So very quickly, it was like the penny dropped, and it was like, this is where my women have to go. So one of the reasons I was pushing against that idea was that I knew if my women were going to go on the Camino, I was going to have to go on the Camino. Yeah, so it would have been a lot easier to lie on a mat in a yoga retreat on a Greek island, I can tell you that much. My feet would have been...
You would have missed the Camino yourself.
Exactly. So it wasn't meant to, it was meant to be that I was meant to go, right? So anyway, the call of the Camino got me. And in my book, the women just decide to go 2 weeks before their trip. So one of the women is very religious, and it has been her dream to go on the Camino. And she has watched the movie The Way like so many times, and she never had the opportunity. She thought she'd never get there, and then she has the opportunity. So she is really organized, and this has been her dream. But the other 2 women, they don't really know anything about it, except that they just know that this is the place that they need to go to clear their head and sort their problems out. So when I decided I'm going to set this on the Camino, the logical part of my brain was going, that's crazy. How are you going to walk all this? But I ignored the logic. But when I looked at my calendar, I only had 1 week that I could go because my son was doing his exams and I had to be here for that. So I ended up booking only 3 weeks before I went. And my walking experience in Dublin is literally like this flat, right? The north side of Dublin. Anyone who has been here will know Dublin is very, very flat. And I was afraid to get in some hill experience in case I damaged my knee or anything like that. So I literally went to Decathlon about the week before and I bought the cheapest poles. It cost me €12 for my poles and they saved
Not
my
a
life.
sponsor.
And they saved my life. And I decided also that if my women were going to arrive solo and kind of unprepared, I was going to do that. Now, when I say unprepared, I really researched as much as is available online. So I looked at all the videos on what to pack, what to wear, and I brought very, very little. I think it helps when you're going on your own as well, because you don't care what you look like at night. You know, you're not going to be dressing up. You're not going to, you know. So I didn't care what I looked like. So I packed very light and I wore the trainers that I had them for over 6 months. I had a new-ish pair as a backup with me and I never wore them. So, yeah, so my research did, my short research did work. But one little point, was I worried because I hadn't got all this training? No, because when I was decided to go, there was no way that I was walking the full 115 kilometers. That was not my plan. I thought, I don't have to do this. I don't need a Compostela. So I thought that I was going to get up every morning, because the luggage guy collects your bags at 8 a.m., right? So yeah, everybody has to be up. So I thought, I'll just get up, I'll walk about 10K, and then I'll sit in a nice Spanish cafe with a café con leche, and I'll just write about the scenery, right? And that was my plan. And I'm telling you now, within 2 hours of day one, I got swept up with the energy of the Camino. That I just decided that day, okay, I'm going to walk to Puerto Marin. I'm just going to do that and I'll see how I feel the next day. And I did that every single day until I arrived in Santiago. So I ended up walking over 100 kilometers in the end, which I really had no intention of doing, but you can call it energy or you can call it the magic of the Camino. It's I think I was just swept along by everybody else as well, and the simplicity of it. I would say that one of the most attractive things about walking the Camino for me was that I didn't have to have a map. I didn't have to know where I was going. I actually put a post up 2 days before I left saying, am I crazy to think that I can just follow yellow arrows and follow people in front of me? And everyone came back to say, no, that's all you have to do. So you just put one foot in front of the other, follow the arrows or follow other people. And I did that all the way to Santiago.
That is amazing. That is a great story, Ruth. And I'm definitely sure that everything took you by surprise. You were just hoping to walk a little bit and write a lot. Did you end up writing anything on the Camino?
No. So everything went upside down. I was too tired, right? And so what I did do is I didn't write any of the book, but what I did was I journaled about the descriptions. So like when I got to, my plan was if I leave early, like 7 o'clock in the morning, that means that I'll arrive in my next town by 1 or 2 o'clock, which gives me time to rest all afternoon and that evening so that I can be okay to walk again. So during those times, I just journaled about the smell of the forest, let's say the eucalyptus forests, the sound. I just put notes like the sound of the boots crunching on the leaves, the smell of the coffee, the Torta de Santiago, how it tasted. So I just wrote notes, but I didn't write any of the book. And I just came back with pen and paper notes on different locations. And I took photos and videos. So I didn't look at my social media. I didn't look at Google Maps. I just used my phone for photos. Another thing I did is a tip is I didn't use my watch either. I decided that I would walk until I was either hungry or tired. And that proved to be very good because most mornings I walked for an hour and a half before I had breakfast. So I knew then that suited me because then I knew I had maybe a third of the trip already done, you know, and I could slow up after that. But yeah, no, the writing didn't start till I came home.
Many people say that one of the most powerful aspects of the Camino is the people you meet along the way. How did you connect with fellow pilgrims? Did you walk on your own? Did you chat with people, with locals or other
Yes.
pilgrims?
So when I start, so another piece of advice I would give people that if you go with a group, or if you go with your partner or your husband or whatever, it's really, really important to walk on your own, you know, maybe for a few days or maybe a few hours during the day. Because like I said, you can leave at 7 and just say, okay, I'll see you when I get there. Like you're going to get there by lunchtime. You'll get there by 2:00, right? You're going to see your group or your people again. But I would advise people to walk on their own because it's only when you walk on your own in the quiet and through nature that you can just empty your head. You don't have to have a problem to focus on either, by the way. Like mostly I thought about absolutely nothing when I was walking. But it gives you time to de-stress and get away from the busyness of life and the social media and everything that is, you know, in our lives these days. But also, I think if you walk solo, it gives you more of an opportunity to meet people. You know, because people are less likely to go up if they see a couple walking together, I think, or if there's a group of women or a group of men, they're less likely to approach them. But yeah, the very first day leaving Saria, this is funny actually. I think I was about 2 hours in, maybe an hour and a half. And the first woman I met was another woman from Dublin. She was the first woman I spoke to. But there was a very big difference. She was the first woman I met on my first day, but this was her third week. So she had started back at the start of the Camino Frances in Saint-Jean, and she was there. She was walking over 3 weeks with her bag on her back. And I was actually the first Irish person she met. So it's so funny. She walked for 3 weeks, didn't meet any Irish people. I arrive on my first day. She's the first person I meet. And of course,
There was
Ireland
a connection there.
yeah, I was meant to meet her. So, and actually she appears in my book. But the funny thing is, Ireland is such a small country. She only lives 15 minutes away from me.
Really?
Yeah. She lives up the road.
Walking distance.
And we meet up a mountain outside Saria. That was great for me because we started to talk to each other, and then like I walked with her for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then she was more fit than me, so I needed a break, and so we just said goodbye. But our paths kept crossing when I was walking down the town in Portamarin later that night. She was just about to have dinner with some other pilgrims, so she called me over and included me in their group, and they had also been walking for weeks. And eventually we swapped numbers, and I met her for beers in Arzua, and then I met her when we came back. Oh, and I met her in Santiago. She waited till I arrived in Santiago as well for my arrival. It was fantastic.
Oh.
So I have her. I have one of my characters meet her. So I have. So getting back to your question. Sorry, I talk a lot.
Of course.
Getting back
this is
to
our time for you.
Yes, getting back to your question about the people that you meet. So the first person I met was Michelle from Dublin. The next day I met a Japanese girl called Mayuki. She was carrying her bag, and I noticed that she had a Japanese flag on it. So I've been to Japan, and the last time was 2019. So I started to ask her where she was from in Japan. And she said to me, "Oh, you won't know where I'm from. It's a very tiny place." And I said, "Well, what's it called anyway? So it was called Koyasan, and I said to her, I've been there. So she couldn't believe it because it's a tiny town up the top of a mountain, but it's full of Buddhist temples. And when I went to Japan in 2019 with my family, we stayed in a temple up the top of the mountain. So she couldn't believe it. She said there's so many Japanese people don't even know where this is. And then she bumps into me, and I had been in her village. So that's another funny connection. So she was really, really tired, and her bag was way, way, way too big. She didn't know about the luggage transferring service. So we walked for maybe 3 hours that day. And then the next day I met her, and she was like so thankful. She'd sent her bag ahead, and she was like a different person. So she was meant to meet me as well. So one of my characters meets her as well. And then there's another Irish woman, and she is in the book as well. So I asked, obviously, with their permission. So my characters meet 3 of the real people that I met. So although the book is a novel, everywhere that I walked, everywhere that I stayed, everywhere that I ate, my women do the same. And 3 of the people that I met, my women meet them. So what people have been saying to me is that they really feel like they are walking the Camino with these women. And actually, then I tell them, well, you're actually walking in my footsteps as well. And the bookshop owners love this idea because there's a real connection between the reader and the writer, because they're walking in my steps through my characters.
And although you did not do any physical writing on your Camino, you definitely were creating the story step by step. So it was happening as you were walking. That's beautiful. We always say that regarding people, that one on the Camino is as long or as lonely as one to be, because you don't have to walk alone, but you can choose to walk alone. And the other way around, you can go with people, but decide to have some time on your own. And no matter how you decide to walk, the Camino has always a way to teach us something about ourselves, about others, about life. What did it teach you?
Well, I agree with you. And actually, on the inside of my book, where you have to put like a saying or something like that, a dedication. So what's lovely about the book as well is the scallop shell. So the scallop, there is on each chapter. But I've dedicated the book, it says, to Camino dreamers everywhere, whether it takes days or weeks, remember your Camino, your way, one step at a time. And I really believe that because, sometimes on social media forums or in Facebook groups, you see people saying, oh, it's not a real Camino if you only do Camino de Santiago. And none of that is true. I met so many wonderful people who were walking for 3 or 4 weeks who would say to me, oh, but there's people at home who, probably think you're great for walking for, 6 days. So sorry, what was your question again?
About what I was wondering, what did the Camino teach you in particular? What did you learn on your Camino?
Okay, well, the first thing it taught me was that I was more resilient than I thought, because I didn't train and I didn't plan on walking every day for hours and hours and hours. So it taught me that actually once you don't overthink these things, people would say, oh, but I don't know if I could do that because my knees get very sore, my hips get very, look, everything is going to get sore when you're walking day after day. Just don't think about it. Just don't think about it. I mean, you wake up, you go, oh my God, what happened to my hip? Your hip is responding to what happens in your feet. So I discovered that I was more resilient than I thought. And I discovered unusual things. So that I liked getting up earlier and earlier. At the start, because I think all women who travel alone always have to be more cautious about safety. There's so many things that men just never have to think about. But women, when they're walking on their own and maybe in a forest, you just have to be more alert. And that was it was a tiny worry for me before I went. And then when I was there, so like the first day or two, I always made sure that I could see people ahead of me. But actually, you quickly realize that it's one of the safest things that you can do. The people are just wonderful. People are there for their own reasons. And so one thing that I didn't think I'd do was like get up in the dark and go early and really enjoy that time, the space. And so I didn't think I was going to walk alone. I didn't think I'd ever walk when it was kind of dark, and I did. So I think it taught me to be a bit more braver, more brave in real life. Yeah. And not to restrict yourself, thinking, I don't think I could do that, or I don't think I'd be comfortable. I think you need to rely on your gut instinct, because that will set you straight.
That's beautiful. We talked about your writing a bit before, but I wanted to ask you, from the perspective of the you before the Camino and the you now, how did the Camino shape your writing style?
So with this particular book, I definitely have more descriptions of nature and the smells, the sounds, much more than I have in my first book. Now, obviously, the first book is set in a city, but I think that your senses are highlighted when you're walking the Camino without really thinking about it. But we don't realize sometimes the noisy world that we live in. When you leave your house and there's traffic and there's and there's, machines, and like we say, social media is always on, and the news is always really, really depressing at the moment. We're kind of bombarded with noise and a lot of negativity. The world can be a difficult place at the moment. So being on the Camino, it kind of heightened my senses to, looking at nature, the smells of the forest, how that smell at 6:30 in the morning is so different to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The sounds of, boots crunching in the forest or poles tapping on all of these descriptions went into the book. And I think it made it a more rounded experience for the reader that they can actually feel. So I think if I compare it with my other book, I think going forward, I'll be carrying that forward into my next book, that it's really important to create the whole environment rather than just what you can see and what you can hear. It's what you can smell, what you can taste. Actually, somebody said they were hungry after reading this book because I mentioned the Camino de Santiago so much, and the chorizo. Yeah, that they were drooling as they were thinking about the chorizo. So that's quite funny. So that's a compliment. So since walking the Camino, I think it makes me, as a writer, more aware of thinking about the senses more in my writing to get that full experience across to the reader.
That's great. Finally, for those who are listening or watching us and are thinking about walking the Camino but haven't taken that first step, what is your best piece of advice?
Well, I think that I do believe in the call of the Camino. If you have thought about walking the Camino, that thought is not going to go away. So your decision is basically not, is when you're going to do it. And the way I would see it, like I'm 58, so depending on your age, if you're fit now, why wait 5 years? If you can do it now, do it now. In 5 years' time, you may not be able to do it. You might get an injury or something else might happen. You don't have to take it on as this huge thing. of 4 weeks. If you want to, that's great. Make space in your life for it. But even like my experience, and I know sometimes people criticize Sarria to Santiago as being a very busy route. It absolutely does not have to be. If you leave early, you'll have a lot of space to yourself. And I would say just do it, really. Like if you say, "Oh, I'm going to wait until I'm much fitter. Oh, I'm going to wait until I am skinnier and I've lost lots of weight. Oh, I'm going to wait till I go to the gym." Look, you're just pushing. Don't wait. Just do it. I had no training. Okay, I don't recommend that you go with no training. Definitely you need to walk. You need to build up your walks, and you also need to get some hills in. Originally, I wanted to do the flattest route, which I think is the Portuguese one, and I might do that one again. I might do that the next time. But for me, the Portuguese route was too similar to where I live because it's beside the ocean a lot of the time, which is why I picked Sarria to Santiago. So I didn't have all that training. I had a set of poles, and I just take each day at a time. You can rest, you can get a taxi if you need to some parts. You don't have to do everything 100%. Don't miss out on the opportunity of visiting the Camino because you don't think you're ready. You'll never be ready. Just go do it. You won't be disappointed.
Although we always say that any training can help a lot when you decide to walk.
100%. Oh yeah.
The more you train, the better. But we also offer rest days and shorter days so that people can create their own Camino and walk as much or so little as they want or can. And there are options to move from one point to another if needed. So one shouldn't be scared to walk. And you've been a great inspiration today. And I believe a lot of people will find help in your words. Ruth, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Camino Talks. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, both on foot and on the page. And to everyone listening, A Week to Remember, can you show it again? Because I don't have it with me. A Week to Remember is available already in bookshops and online. So if you're looking for a story that captures the spirit of the Camino, this is one of our best recommendations so far. And as always, if you yourself are dreaming of walking the Camino, remember the path is waiting for you. Just reach out, ask for a quote, and we can create the perfect Camino for you. See you next time on Camino Talks. Thank you very much, Ruth.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.